In this video we're going to install this power supply cigarette lighter with USB into our classic Mini. That's what it looks like. Now the reason I want to install one of these in is just so, mostly for the USB, so I can run things like a GPS or a dash cam in the actual Mini. It just makes things a little bit safer. Not necessarily the cigarette lighters. I don't think they can actually hold cigarette lighters in there, but mostly for the USB power, to power those devices. So the way I'm going to wire this in, I've got a fuse as well. I'll just show you a wiring diagram. Okay, so this seems to be the closest one. So if you look at the fuses here, terminal number 3 will have power when the ignition is on. Obviously everything from terminal 4 is fused by that fuse, number 11, but we want to get the power from when the ignition is on, so terminal 3. So from terminal 3, I'll just show you what it looks like in here. So terminal number 3 would be this one here. So that will have 12 volts when the ignition is on. And then from this pin here, it'll have a fuse before the main wire leads and follows the rest of the wiring harness into the cabin. Okay, so with the wiring, I've got 7.5 amp. I've got 10 amp as well. Obviously the 10 amp is a lot thicker, but I probably will go with the 10 amp, even though it is a bit thicker. Even though I'm not going to run any high drain appliances off this, definitely won't be running that inverter off it. But still, I think the bigger one will be safer. So we're going to give that a go first. So the first thing I need to do is wire up the fuse. I'm using this hot fuse holder, so I can use the same type of fuses which I've got in there already. And this actual cigarette lighter part, there's a fuse inside there, so I'll check that out and see what ampage that is. And then we'll get that connected up. So I need to make up this connector first with this the blade on the end. That's what I've got to get made up first. Okay, so the way I would like to do it, I'm going to crimp it, but I'm also going to solder as well. Okay, so I've run out of the heat shrink in the correct size, so I'm going to try this and just see if that does shrink down enough. It's not essential, but it just makes it look a little bit tidier. So that fits in there like that. You can see a few of the wires sticking out, and then we just need to select the correct size on here. The purpose of this ratchet tool is so it'll compress to the correct amount depending on which size connector you're using. So that's in there nice and firm, but I'm just going to add some solder in there just to make it a little bit stronger, just to make sure nothing comes apart. Right, so the place I wanted the solder was sort of right in that bit where the wires stick out, so that's sorted out now. Now I don't know how well this heat shrink is going to work on here. It does seem too big. I can actually put that all the way to the end there. That shouldn't be a problem. If this doesn't work, I'll have to go and get some more. Okay, that's probably the best I can do, but that seems okay. Right, the next thing I need to do now is either feed the wire through So let me just get the right one. We're going to use the 10 amp. Yep, that's it. And then obviously I need to get that connector onto there, so that can screw into where the fuse goes. So I just need to undo that bit first. Alright, the next thing I need to do now is get this end of the wire down into here. We've passed that with that loom into the actual cabin. What I'm going to do on this side of the engine bay, I might actually see if I can find some insulator, some conduit or something to run this through, so you don't see the red wire coming up here. So I'll have a look at what I've got. And then obviously the wire will come up here, and then the fuse will sort of sit in this section just here. So I'll have a look at what conduit I've. So these are just a few bits I've got left over from other projects. On my Jeep I replaced all this in the engine bay on the wiring harness, because just with the high temperature it broke and melt, so that's all leftover stuff. So I don't really want to use the plastic one, but I have this braided one here, which I've probably got just the right amount of length, and then it looks sort of more to the period of the car rather than the plastic one. So I'm going to have to thread the wire through this first, but it will look a lot better. Alright, so progress update. So I've got the wire through that braided hose. The actual red wiring shows up more when you shine the light at it, but when there's no light on there you don't really see it that well. So that braided wiring follows the hose, or follows the wiring harness, comes out to here. You'll notice I've got another red wire as well. That's for another project, but I'm just putting that in there now. Okay, so the next step of the process now, we need to wire this up. You've got a few options. I could probably unscrew it, hardwire directly to it. But what I probably will do is just cut this a bit shorter. So the earth wire, I'm going to use one of these terminals, so that will go onto here, and then that will earth itself once it screws up underneath the dash. And then of course the positive wire will just join in to the one I threaded through the engine bay. So just work out the length on that. That doesn't need to be too long, so even that long is fine, I reckon. So I'm going to cut that there. Next thing will be, I need to work out which one of these is the ground. So I'll need a multimeter to do that. So I'll just take the ends off those. Oh, that one's gone too hard. Okay, so we want to just put that onto ohms. I always just test to make sure it's working. Yep, that's fine. Now earth will be this outer edge here. So we'll just try this terminal first. And yep, that seems to be correct. No, that's the one. Okay, so that's giving me 0 now on that one, and I'll just test with the USB. Yep, okay, so this wire here is the earth wire. So on that one, what I want to do is attach that terminal onto there. I don't know if I need to double that over or not. I think I might have to, just to make sure it gets a nice secure connection. And always just test to make sure that's nice and tight. Okay. That's a bit of a struggle getting that on. But as with all the other heat shrink, I always have heaps of the size that I don't need. That's the way it works. Alright, I just need to fix up that. Okay, so the next thing to do now is to work out the position where it's going to mount. So something like that under there. Some of the things that you need to be wary of, if you're screwing that straight into there, you're going to have screws sticking up. The other alternative is just to use a bolt, put a bolt through there and tighten it up with nuts. So that's one option. But just to get it in there, I'm going to screw it anyway. The other factor you need to consider is how far forward or backwards it sits. Because if you look at something like, that's just that end that we cut off. So if something like that is plugged into it, it's going to stick out about that much. So if that is sitting sort of there, will that annoy you? Probably something like that would be okay. So that's something I just need to play around with to get right. So I want to get the position right, and then obviously cut that wire and solder it onto that one. So that's what needs to be done now. But I'll have a play around to work out the position. Okay, so that's screwed in now. I tested the earth, connected the multimeter from here just to one of the metal and one of these switches, and that is looking great. Those screws, they don't really stick through that much at all, a little bit, but I can change them for bolts later if it starts to annoy me. I'll just put that cover back down. None of this is glued in, and I did that deliberately, so yeah. I might actually change those over for bolts, but for now. Alright, so I just need to connect up the fuse now. Okay, so let's test it out. I've got my GPS here. And this is a spare one I used to use in the Jeep until I put a new head unit in there which contains a GPS. So that actually just has a USB socket at the end. So we'll plug that one in. There we go. Switch on the ignition. Okay, the light turns on there, so that GPS should just turn on. Actually, it's probably just been sitting for so long, I might need to actually turn it on with the power button. Alright, there we go. Okay, anyway, that's working. I'll just test those other sockets too. I don't have anything else to plug in there but this, another USB adapter, and that turns on nicely. Okay, so I'll leave it there. Hopefully you've sort of had some idea how to connect one of these up now. And I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching my videos.